I think one of the most common things that ace people struggle with is dating. Because newsflash, I don't know if you know this, but ace people are interested in dating sometimes, and we do want to have romantic relationships, but we're not always interested in sex. I figured I would just take the time today to kind of talk to you about my experience dating while ace, give you some tips, some pointers, some things to think about. I have been on one date in my whole life. It was terrible, wouldn't recommend it. But I have talked to a number of guys on dating apps. And I know dating apps are really, really weird for ace people. I think my biggest issue with dating apps is that they are very focused on appearance. And as somebody who is not sexually attracted to anybody, I can't just like swipe on somebody. I have to know like the most intimate details about their lives to actually understand if I would like them as a person. And so for that reason, this is not sponsored. I just wanted to tell you Hinge is, I think, the best option for ace people when they want to find a dating app. Hinge is different than other dating apps. It's designed to be deleted. But mainly the cool thing about Hinge is you answer personal questions and they have them all on your profile. So you do get to see pictures, but it's also like you can like specific comments from a person. You can comment on their answer to a question. A lot of times their questions are actually really, really cool too. It's like, what's your like weirdest travel story, or what are your top 3 TV shows, or stuff like that. It's super fun. And so Hinge, even though it's not perfect and I still don't like dating apps, if I had to use one, Hinge is the best option because I feel like I can get to know somebody way more through that than I can through like Tinder or Bumble or anything like that. And so I will say I haven't had a relationship. The dating experience I've had is through Hinge. I've talked to, I think, about 3 men through Hinge. So that's good for me. And normally what it looks like is we just have like a little bit of a conversation going back and forth, and eventually I realize I don't want to date you. But the one that I did have, I talked to this guy for probably about 2 or 3 weeks, and then eventually we ended up going on one date. And I won't tell you all the details, but oh my goodness, I realized dating was not for me. So let's talk about dating. One of the issues with being ace is I feel like my biggest problem was I spent the whole time worried about having to come out to this person, having to explain to them that I'm not interested in sex, wondering when the best time to tell them was. In my experience, because I'm somebody who is out on the internet, the guys I talked to actually figured out that I was ace without me having to tell them, which is good and bad all at the same time. They basically found me through YouTube. It's fine. But because of that, normally it was a really quick conversation where they'd be like, okay, I don't know how to ask this. I'm just going to do it. Let's get it out there. Are you asexual? What does that mean? What does that look like? And often they would be like, well, why are you on this app? Are you interested in dating? Like, do you want to have a relationship? And I would be like, yeah, definitely. And they're like, cool. Okay, move on. And I understand that once you get into a relationship with somebody, it's a totally different thing. Like if you have a physical relationship with somebody, you kind of have to communicate that and talk about it. But I think it can be really hard for ace people to understand when they need to be upfront, when they need to tell this person that they may not want sex with them, and when to like pull back. And I think my biggest piece of advice is wait for the best time, wait for it to come up. The first date, you don't have to like straight up be like, just FYI, I don't want to have sex with you, and like open it with that, because a lot of times you may not even reach the point where you need to tell them that, because you might break up, or you may not date, or you may not whatever. If they ask about it, be honest, be straightforward, let them know. But a lot of times I think it's not a thing you need to worry about until you're getting to that stage of the relationship, you know? If you're not dating, if you're not starting to look for people to date, all because you're worried about that thing down the line where you have to tell them you don't want to have sex with them, don't panic, just chill, let things happen the way they're supposed to. And you may be surprised, maybe the person you're talking to actually doesn't care as much as you think they do. I think a lot of people also worry that when you're asexual and you're in the dating sphere, you can't date allosexual people. I know it might be easier to date an ace person. I haven't done it myself, but it sounds great. But I just want to let you know that there are allo people who are interested in ace people. It has to be very situational, and it depends on the person. But in my experience, there are allo people who date ace people, who marry ace people, who have relationships with ace people, and it works out fine. So don't think you have to find another ace person to be in the dating sphere. I think the most important thing when you're dating as an ace person is to set boundaries and don't do things that you don't want to do. Don't feel like you have to have sex with somebody. Don't feel like you have to even be in a romantic relationship with somebody just because the world tells you to, you know? It's important to set boundaries and to let people know if it is important to you to not have sex, to not have a physical relationship, you know, make sure you're upfront, make sure they understand that, but know that you don't have to necessarily disclose that right away. I have asked out people a lot, like, if you were in this situation, would you want me to tell you right away or not? And most of the time it's, well, let us know like when it becomes necessary. You know, let me know if we're getting to that stage of the relationship. Tell us more earlier than later, but don't think that you have to do it on the first date. You know, I don't need to know right when I meet you. So if it's important to you, you know, set those boundaries ahead of time, but also you have the boundary within yourself to know that like, you don't have to disclose information that you don't want to. You don't have to come out unless you feel really, really pushed to. And even then, you don't have to come out unless you really want to, you know? You could just say, I don't want to have sex right now. That's totally fine. Be careful if you're an ace going into dating, because it can be a little bit scary and very uncomfortable. You may find yourself in a situation like I was, where I went to a movie with a guy and he grabbed my hand without asking me, and it was uncomfortable. But I would say it totally can happen. You can definitely date while ace. Hinge is a really great option if you want to go for that. I know people who have met online through other things like Twitter and Tumblr and all sorts of stuff. So don't feel like if you're ace, you can't find a relationship, you can't fall in love. It's totally possible. And I definitely think you can be happy in a relationship with an allo person.